Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Oscars Project, and welcome back to Film Chewing. We are going through and discussing every best picture from 1960 until today, eventually. Today we will be discussing 1966, A Man for All Seasons. And I'm here with Jared and Chris. And Chris, how are you doing today? Can you give us an introduction, please?
I'm doing well, thanks, Steve. It's Chris Mohan from the channel, Chris Mohan, and from various other podcasts and reading, including Speculative Speculations and other fine podcasts we host and discussions we host on patreon.com, which always worth reminding people is open to everybody, including this one. If anybody wants to join in, it's always good fun. More the merrier.
Yes. And Jared.
Cheers, fellas. I'm Jared from the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel, and also on Speculative Speculations, and also involved in plenty of other fine podcasts on pagetune.com.
Yeah. Yes, lots of stuff. So A Man for All Seasons was a play that I believe was adapted into a movie. So what did you guys think?
It was pretty good. It was a little stuffy, you know. Had that English stuffiness going on, and it takes place in the dark and dreary castles half the time, and but solid acting as always. You know, these are Oscar winners, so there's going to be a bunch of good points about them that as far as filmmaking criteria goes. But I could see some people getting bored with this type of film, especially if you're not familiar with the history. I was interested because it was a different take on the history, on some of the history that I've read and that I've seen in other shows and stuff. So, and I'd never seen this one, so it kept my interest. But it was a little slow moving, I thought, and a little, like I said, stuffy. I guess that's the word for it.
First time watch for me, I have to say. Never seen Man for All Seasons. First time watching it. I think it's very interesting for a whole load of reasons. I think of all of the films that we've done this year, it's the first pure drama film that has won the Oscar. In some ways, sort of setting the tone, I think, for some of the 70s still to come. I think it is very stagey. I think you can see its lineage from the stage to the screen very clearly. And actually, the guy Paul Scofield, who won the Best Actor for this, was the original performer of the stage play as well.
Okay.
As it turns out, so he takes that straight through there, and it's another film that shows America's fascination with England, especially Hollywood's fascination with England during the 60s here. Like, oh my god, what the hell? Like, even Susanna York's in this as well as Tom Jones. We've even got some of the same people. I liked it like immeasurably more than Tom Jones, without doubt. I think it's very slow, especially the first 45 minutes. I think there's a lot of exposition that he gets in there, kind of setting the scene. I think from there on for the next 45 minutes, I think it's brisk from that point on, and then obviously you have the point that it's trying to make kind of towards the end when it kind of draws that out. But this period of history, I mean, it's not one that I know well, but obviously Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall series, very famous series, is this period of time as well. It's a very, very important part of British history, I think, and of the British Empire, etc., and how, again, I hate to say this, every film that we talk about, every book we talk about, how it sort of lays the land for how politics changed because of that period of time. People could see that people, if you were powerful enough, could make your own laws to suit your needs, whereas before that it wasn't necessarily a thing that was in order to things, but Henry VIII kind of tore it up a little bit. So I think it's a really interesting time period. I think the film is, like I say, very drama stagey. It's just a very shocking surprise to all the other films we've seen in the 60s so far, I think, in terms of style.
Yeah, I think I looked into it before I watched it, that it was a play, and you can definitely feel it has the same kind of feeling to it, and some of the other reviews I've seen, they talk about kind of the people not enjoying the drama and the conversations and the plotting. And I don't know that it's so much that. I think a lot of the scenes just drag on. Like a lot of the scenes are just overlong, needlessly overlong. Like the scenes could be cut a few seconds here and there. I think there's something to be said about editing down certain scenes to make the dialogue a little tighter and not give it so much time to breathe. I mean, I don't mind time to breathe, but there are some scenes, especially in the first, I think 30, 45 minutes, that just kind of just people walking around or in a boat or just in it. It's like, okay, like let's get on with it. Like it. So I can see that it does feel like you're there, like you're a part of it because you're seeing all these kind of mundane things happening. But overall, it was okay. I think can definitely feel that it was a play before, though. That's the same guy. And seeing John Hurt was kind of neat because I saw him and I thought I know him from somewhere. He's a lot older now, and so that was kind of a treat.
Yeah, it's his first role on screen, and he has quite a prominent role in it and a very important role, I think, in it as well. To your point, Steve, I couldn't help but think actually that type of film made now is made very differently. In many of the ways that you described, they would have cut the start and the end. The editing would have been a lot tighter. The camera angles and all would have been a lot tighter in the face and all of that kind of, like I definitely see how that film has been, that archetype of film has been changed and molded in the years into being these much more tense affairs the whole way through, because there are very high stakes in the thing, but it does have a sort of languid feel for most of it, and it's almost, this film kind of presents Thomas More's outcome as an inevitability rather than being tense, I think, and I don't think they would have done that in the past 20 years. It would have been much more exciting and, oh my god, I can't believe they're going to kill him, kind of thing.
I'm not sure if the version, because I did see that there are some black and white versions. I did watch the color version. I wish I did see the black and white version.
Oh, really?
Because I think the black and white version would have been, it just would have had a different feel to it. So I kind of wish I would have seen the black and white.
And you wouldn't have seen all the pretty costumes.
Yeah, I guess. Cool costumes, though.
Yeah, especially Henry VIII with Robert Shaw, I thought was pretty OTT. As I think his scene with Thomas More is pretty great, actually, in a lot of ways, where everybody sort of waits on Henry VIII to laugh before they're allowed to laugh and all that. Yeah. There is a playfulness in that scene, especially, and then his over-the-top costume that's almost makes him twice the size of man than he was, you know. It was funny, those sections.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And the like I was saying before, the point of view being from that period of history, being taking it from Thomas More's, Sir Thomas More's, basically point of view, is a little different than what I was used to. We've seen a lot of King Henry VIII's point of view.
Yes,
you know, we had that series, The Tudors, out over a decade ago, and that was definitely Henry VIII's point of view, and it covered the same territory, though. It covered the same period of history, and especially with the whole Anne Boleyn saga has been gone over and over again in a lot of different writings and history books and in movies and shows and stuff like that. So it was just interesting to see it from this guy's point of view, and how they just it's just it was kind of opposite than what I was used to, because we're used to the romance and the you know, in that type of thing, and the craziness of King Henry VIII being the focus, you know, and he only makes a few appearances in this film, you know, here and there, and they're bombastic, and they liven things up a little bit when he does appear, but for the most part, it's a pretty stark imagery. It's pretty, you know, it opens with this medieval imagery with, you know, with the gargoyle statues and stuff like that, and then it kind of veers into wilderness after that to kind of show us the contrast of this world they live in. They live in castles, they live in keeps, they live in manor houses that are built from stone and what have you, and that's contrasted with the wilderness that's around them, and that kind of shows the wildness, almost metaphorically, of the political atmosphere as well. And I really like how they portrayed that. But like you said, Steve, you can tell it's very play-like. They take this imagery, and then they just kind of cut to the scene of the play, with the people talk to each other and stuff like that. And it's very obvious that that's how they're presenting it to us. But I liked it. I enjoyed it, just because, like I said, just the different viewpoint of the story.
The interesting point about the viewpoint isn't it kind of interesting, whether it's this story or another story, the point of view that we as a viewer are following along with, that how different the story is. If we were following the king around, we may even be rooting for him because we have this attachment to and he's funny and he's charismatic but what, from Thomas's point of view, a man who's trying to do the right thing and staying by his convictions, and being kind of trying to do all the right things, we root for him, knowing that he's probably not going to come out victorious in some way. But it is interesting, the POV that we follow, just like if something like The Sopranos, if we followed one of Tony's henchmen that didn't make it, the story would have been completely different. I mean, we would have seen Tony as this evil, awful person, but when we follow him, like, we know he's evil and awful, we still kind of root for him, even if he is evil and awful. So it's just interesting.
Yeah. Or even like one of the members of the New York family. Tony would have been the ultimate bad guy,
It changes your objectivity and judgment of all the other characters around you, because again, as you say, we look at Henry and his actions through Thomas More's eyes, and the way he judges them. We see the same through Thomas Cromwell, and especially Richie Rich is the character that gets judged basically from the start of the movie right through to the end.
Yeah.
Great name, Richie Rich.
Yeah.
Real person.
It's a banger of a name.
Yeah, banger of a name. That is the one thing this is definitely missing. We're going to come out of the era of bangers, music-wise. We've still got a couple to go, but we're moving. If I'm going to sum up the 60s in terms of like one-word bangers, is probably the one.
Oh yeah. That and that was a great scene when Richie Rich is thrown in the mud, basically.
Yes.
And that just gave you this hint of the future that basically there's going to be mud on a lot of people. There's going to be a lot of mud racking and a lot of mud on people's faces, and eventually, it's, metaphorically, and that was just the to show you what's coming, and the people laughing at him and stuff, and in that line that Sir Thomas More had, it was he said, "Respect is water in the desert," and I love that line, and just a lot of little things like that were made it enjoyable for me, because I just liked how they were giving you all these little clues about, look what's happening. How's that going to lead to the future? That's going to come up again at some point. It's going to be reflective of how they act toward each other in the future, and I like how they pulled a lot of that stuff off.
I love the scene that followed that, especially the one with when he comes in after being splashed in the mud, and he confronts Thomas More, and Thomas More's having a conversation with his daughter and the other, the suitor. I cannot not remember his name.
Oh yeah.
The guy whose opinions flip. He's just a young man, and he gets very emotive about things that annoy him at the time, but he changes his mind next time you see him. And you can see from the way Thomas More approaches his relationship with Meg is that he actually quite likes him as a person, but he won't sign off until on their marriage, until he comes to a certain point of view, and we can kind of see that he's so wishy-washy in his views in some ways that it doesn't take him too long to change and come around so that he can get married, etc. But that whole conversation where he says, "I can't believe you let him go. He's obviously a snake, that guy." And he says, "But the laws are important in the world," and in that way, that's where, for me, it's the most stagey, because the whole film is very much about the speeches and the oratory and the points that it's trying to make the whole way through. It's not done necessarily visually. It's done, I've got things to say here and I've got points to make, and you have to listen as the audience member to what's going on here. And it was incredibly effective in those moments, especially when Paul Scofield as Thomas More was given that opportunity, because I thought he was terrific in it. Like his whole way that he carries himself and his nature, and he rarely shouts and all of that, but everybody's sort of afraid of him to the point that they have to kill him, because his nature is such that he's beyond reproach. And it's why Henry VIII tries to go to him and say, look, because of you and who you are and how you're respected, I need your support, because people will follow, and he never gets it.
Yeah. And that initial conversation that he has with Cardinal Wolsey, played by Orson Welles,
amazing.
And that initial conversation, where he basically says no, and he says no a lot throughout the whole film. He's always saying no.
Yeah.
And but that conversation right there, set up like a stage conversation, basically sets up the whole conflict. Their verbal sparring in that moment sets the conflict for the whole film. And you mentioned that he would, about the benefit of the law given to Richie Rich, right? And then he says, you give the devil the benefit of the law. And he's like, you're right, I would. and it was just so that it sets up that, like I said, that whole conflict that's going to be coming up. He's going to say no. He's going to say no to all this. He's going to say no to the bribes. He's going to say no to this and that. And he's going to get accused of things, and he's still going to say no. And he's going to say no when he's in jail for however long it was. Like, looked like a few seasons went by. And
his hair tells me that story.
Yeah, so it's good stuff.
Yeah.
How easy would it be just to go along with what they wanted you to do and avoid all of this?
Yeah, that takes quite some mental fortitude in order to not. I mean, even the king even browbeat all the bishops into accepting him as the head of the church in England. And like Chris was saying earlier, this is a monumental piece of English history right here. This is when, King Henry VIII said, nope, I'm the head of the church. It's not the Pope, it's me. and all because he wanted to marry Anne Boleyn, which is it's funny now. I'm sure it was quite serious back then.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly like he married her and that was the last love of his life and lived happily ever after, but it sort of opened the door that he could do whatever the hell he wanted at that stage, including beheading Thomas Cromwell a couple of years later. Like, it was one of those, he tied himself to a snake and then ultimately paid the price for himself, because that's the bit that's left out of this story. The bit that I know is that Thomas Cromwell was the one that organised the title for Henry VIII through Parliament. We didn't see that in the film at all. It was very much his doing at that stage. So but he paid the price. He tied himself to
Cromwell was the patsy who set all this into place. He was the one appointed by Wolsey when Wolsey passed away, and he helped set all this into place. But it was the Anne Boleyn story is so significant, because it was the first one. It was the impetus for him getting a divorce. Or not a divorce, but an annulment, basically.
Annulment,
saying the marriage wasn't valid in the first place, and it was the impetus for that. It was the impetus for him becoming the head of the Church of England, and it really shored up Henry VIII's power. And then he went on to, of course, behead a whole bunch more people and wives and what have you. And
I mean, he was equal opportunity. You've got to give Henry VIII that. He wasn't like, it's just the men that lose their heads. It's men and women wives. Everybody was fair game.
Yeah, and but it's kind of funny that, and we know Cromwell. That they don't show it in the movie, but Cromwell gets his head taken as well eventually. But it was he really pushed his weight around when he had the ear of the king on his side, and you see that, and you see a bunch of references to Spain.
Yes.
In the film, because like Spain was the big power then. They were the ones who were doing things right. And so there was all this references to Spain and how they do things and all that stuff, and how Henry was like, yeah, but I'm gonna do as some of these other Spanish monarchs did. I'm gonna do things my way, just like that, And so it was just neat to see all that tie-in. And the biggest question that Thomas More asked when he was in prison was, yes, but can the king make the world go round? Right? That was a great line. Can the king make the world round instead of flat? And
it was a great piece of screenplay writing. Really,
that's
was,
great.
I don't think I'd heard of this story before this movie.
Interesting. I do want to read Wolf Hall and Bring Out the Bodies and Mirror and the Like, because it's from Thomas Cromwell's point of view, as far as I know. And there's such award-winning and great novels that really capture that. There's also the I suppose Six, which is the musical version of this. If you're feeling left out by the musical, not being around for a few years here, so it is a story that is very rich for telling and retelling, because as you said earlier, like, the viewpoints are so many in this, and so many people had viewpoints throughout it, that you basically get a new story every time.
And it's funny that Anne Boleyn's barely mentioned really in the film, and when she is mentioned, she's referred to as a thing by Cromwell. And I'm just like, oh man, that's totally completely different than some of the other viewpoints. Like in the Tudors show, she's like looks like the mistress, hot temptress person who's gonna steal the king away from his wife, and so it's she's a thing. I'm just like, okay.
So interesting story about that one. So Vanessa Redgrave ended up playing Anne Boleyn very shortly within the thing. She was originally supposed to be the daughter, and couldn't do it because she was committed to other things. But she promised to do a cameo essentially, and was Anne Boleyn then for the minute or so, or 2 minutes she was in the film. So was probably outside of Orson Welles. This isn't a film with loads of big Hollywood names in it. That is the thing to say about it. Like, it does not have the star power that a lot of other films around this time sort of had. If I go to even the other things out this year, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, etc., was Elizabeth Taylor. I think, the very big star power was starting to have a new range of people that were going to take it over, and especially when we get into the 70s, we're going to see this a lot more, of the stars kind of taking over at this stage. But this is an unusual film because it doesn't really have those people in it to the same extent. Orson Welles is a cameo, Leo McKern's in it, kind of character actor in a lot of things. Even Paul Scofield was a stage actor. Susanna York's been in 2 Oscar-winning films here about set in England kind of thing. So yes, okay, maybe she gets some credence there. But it wasn't kind of like, big name, big after big name. Again, as opposed to if this was made in the last 10-15 years, we would have had a couple of very big heavyweights in these roles to carry people through those more slower, languid kind of parts.
A good point. I forget the lead actress's name in Not Gone with the Wind. Jeez, my brain isn't working. The movie we just had, 65.
Sound of Music.
Sound of Music. I'm sorry, I forgot the name. I believe she was pretty popular, right? Back.
Yeah.
She was very well known. Yeah,
she was. So she'd done Mary Poppins the year before.
Poppins. Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, lots of star power. Yeah.
Yeah, and Audrey Hepburn was obviously the year prior to that with My Fair Lady and stuff. So yeah, there were definitely big names. Again, Tom Jones sort of falls into that maybe not as well known kind of actors kind of thing.
Tom Jones is so weird. So weird. How did that happen?
It really is.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Strange indeed.
So weird.
Maybe we'll get to the end and ironically Tom Jones, giving him at a time, you'll be like, I have him in my top 10. It's just growing on me. It's.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
I don't know. That was rough. Even this one is as we mentioned, I think that it does have its moments where it did feel a little slow, and then I did wonder, do I feel like it's slow because of attention spans, and am I one of those people that I complain about wanting things to hurry up and happen? But I think back to certain other dramas that we've seen through the years, something like Breaking Bad, where there's lots of really tense scenes that it's just dialogue. There's no action, no explosions. There's not really a threat of violence. There is some verbal sparring going on, and I think there are ways to do that to make it feel tension, to make you feel the weight of every word. So I do think that maybe it's what we're used to, or what I guess what I'm used to is a little bit tighter. But I did wonder, am I the problem? Because am I wanting things to hurry up too much, just instead of just letting things breathe? So
it's an interesting point, and I think for this time, I think the thing is, this was very clearly a drama. If you look now, a lot of the genres blend. This would have been a drama thriller, again, made nowadays. It'll be interesting when we come to the film next year, which definitely does sort of push the rat's tension up quite a lot in that way, as like a sort of response to this film in some ways, in terms of what they awarded, and that audiences were definitely changing at that stage to kind of want something else out of their films, and especially by the time we get to the 70s. I mean, it has a whole slew of films that couldn't take your eyes off the screen for any part of it in any way. Every scene had a purpose and drive everything forward. So this one's sort of like this weird middle ground, I think, of like transition, from some of the like stage plays that were around that time that were made in films, the Tennessee Williams plays that were made into films that had that kind of high drama, but not necessarily, a lot happening. It was very much about domestic events, whereas this is a historical piece, obviously. But yeah.
Do you either of you think there's a difference between a drama and a historical drama? Is it that different? Because does the history part make it any different than it would be just a fictional story?
I mean, you can have modern day dramas that are based on true stories. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's a historical drama. Is just something that's a funny line, I think, sometimes when people say historical drama, because how far back do you consider something history in order to give it that label? You know what I mean? Because if you make something about the January 6th riot, right, in the Capitol in D.C., and then you made that today, people wouldn't be calling it historical drama. They'd just be calling it, a drama based on true events. But if you make the same movie 20, 30 years from now, is it then a historical drama? So it's interesting. I'm not sure where that line is that cuts it off. Obviously, it's easier to make that distinction when you're making something about the, what was this, 14th, 13th century, whatever it is. Yeah, it is, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Is that a historical drama?
That's true, yeah.
Right? Even though it takes place in 1969 or 68 or whatever it was.
Sure.
What do you think about that? Is that, it's still 50 years ago, but is it a historical drama?
It's funny, if they had made the story about the events of January 6th 15 years ago, before time, they would have called it a dystopian sci-fi movie. But, the point about historical drama versus drama, I think in general that kind of branding is usually used to bring a certain type of person to the cinema. So historical period dramas tend to be quite popular with female audiences in ways that men don't go. But if you just call it a drama or label it as a drama, it can be seen as sort of more male oriented. You know, courtroom dramas, for instance, that kind of stuff that would have came through. So it can be used as a marketing term, and I think that's most of the time when you see films given a genre, it's about the market that they're chasing. Because you speak to the filmmakers and they often go, I mean, I wouldn't call it a horror movie, I would call it a psychological thriller or whatever it is, you know. But obviously certain things sell to certain audiences when they're marketing them. But dramas, most of the time, it's currently, I think, the genre that is disappearing, because pretty much of the reasons that you said at the start, Steve, in terms of like maybe it's a bit languid, it doesn't have the push, and it often is pushed into TV now. When you're going to tell a slower story that's more character based, it usually takes 8 to 10 episodes rather than a 2-hour story. Like the amount of actual dramas that I can think of recently that were very successful, I mean, maybe Marriage Story, very much, if anybody's seen that, it's very much a drama without having kind of thriller elements to it, you know, but it's set within the family and that kind of stuff. And this is very clearly a drama, you know, a stage drama, even if you want to do that. But kind of outside of that, it's not so much a big
the end,
genre.
It turns into a courtroom drama.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Political drama, yeah.
Yeah, thinking about what would be considered historical, I think even something like maybe this, I don't think you'd even consider like the 60s in Vietnam historical just yet. I think maybe the last century, maybe more than 100 years.
The one I was thinking of was Selma. So I think people would call Selma a historical drama now. You know, but I agree with your point about Vietnam. Those kind of war films seem to take longer to gestate and kind of go through. But anything that, like Selma, definitely I think would be considered a historical drama at this stage, because it is taking events. I don't know. It's a strange distinction. It's very interesting. Because
I don't think they considered like Platoon a historical drama when they made it. But if you make something about Vietnam today, it could very well be an historical drama. You know, it depends on.
And I wonder if it depends on your point of view, because obviously Platoon, Full Metal Jacket, those kind of films that were made about Vietnam at the time were very much action films in certain part, you know, in terms they were telling about the horrific and the kind of the war movie kind of mentality, whereas a lot of those other ones that are trying to tell about people are more drama-like, you know, so it fits more.
But they were also awareness films. They were films made to make people aware of what happened and bringing out this new information that everybody's getting. So whereas I think a historical drama might be made more to educate in a certain way.
Oh,
If
possibly,
you can look at it that way, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, especially war films fall into a funny place, I think, because often at certain periods of time, sometimes we're very clearly just action movies and we're there to entertain and thrill. But sometimes, like especially films about Vietnam, tended to be about deglamorizing what war was and actually what the cost of that was, and about people's personal stories. Yes, indeed. So I think they sort of fall into kind of two camps all the time, and sometimes people don't turn up thinking they're going to get a war film, thinking of something like the Thin Red Line, Terrence Malick film, and it's definitely not a war film. It's very much a social statement and a thinking piece about the nature of war, etc. And a lot of people hated it for that reason, because at that time all you were getting was the action war film and people were going to be entertained, etc. So that whole conversation about historical dramas is an interesting one to do, like
because like the Clint Eastwood movies about World War II.
Yeah.
Both of them that he made from both sides. I think those would be considered historical dramas.
Yeah.
You know?
But both action films, you know, as well. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Sure. Those are good examples of that, actually. The Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima. I think both are great.
Yeah.
Thin Red Line, I saw that in theaters, and I would like to rewatch that just because I thought it was so different.
Yes.
But I think about that a lot. I think about watching that movie again. But I think also, I think it depends too on the scope of the movie, if it's about war in general or about just kind of a conflict. I think it's harder to define it as a historical drama if it's more focused on an event or a group or an event in history, kind of recounting an event. If there's something that kind of like Selma, it's something that happened that we're reliving.
Yeah.
Then it's if we were just discussing that time period, I think it'd be harder to classify it as historical drama because it's just kind of people in that time. Where if it's Selma, then it's those events in that time. Yeah. These are the people that were there. This is what they experienced. So maybe that is part of it, is because like a movie like 1923, or the World War I movie a few years back. I don't know that that'd be historical drama because it's just kind of war.
A war movie. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but if it was about a specific event and people in that event, maybe it'd be more the focus or the scope and the focus, I think, matters too.
Fascinating. Selma, historical drama. Malcolm X, not. There you go. Weird.
Well, then you get you got your biopics too. So
interesting. Dramas. It is a good way to learn about history too. I mean,
definitely. Yeah. But all of those dramas tend to contain within them bias of some way, especially those modern retellings of historical events usually carry some sort of either modern message or a desire to tell a story from a certain point of view that hasn't been represented beforehand. Sometimes to represent truth, but often to kind of present a certain viewpoint.
I think it's interesting to think about events that have happened that the people during that time write history, and like we always talk about the victor writes the history books, and then it gets warped again through other people down the line that warp in with their own ideologies or their own biases. So by the time it gets to us, you wonder what really happened. Is this really what happened? I mean, how different was it? Because it's interesting. I think especially now, everything news is not really news. Everything has some kind of slant to it. It's never just straight. So
events.
It's tough.
Yeah. It was interesting seeing how in this film they portrayed the courtroom case and how much of a circus it was, because like the arguments didn't matter.
Yeah,
the verdict was in before they ever arrived, and they just turned it into this circus thing, and then they, which, people have been complaining about courtrooms not, needing to be unbiased and fair and all that stuff for, millennia, and so I found it interesting that it just emphasized the sheer influence that King Henry obtained at that time, that nothing was going to go against him no matter what. And you had this big circus, and then after that it kind of fades to black. And then you have the denouement in the, and then this guy got his head cut off, and then this guy got his head cut off, and then, and then it lists all the people who, all the things that happen afterwards to all the characters in the film, and I thought that was just, it was weird because it had this comic moment for this tragic end to this character.
It did.
And then the fade to black was like, okay, everybody dies, and it's just like very interesting way to end a film.
And
would the OJ trial be historical drama?
Again, maybe not yet.
Not yet.
I think for it to be historical drama, I think everybody sort of watching it for the OJ thing has to not know who OJ was, if that makes sense.
True.
Because a lot of the OJ trial in our time was about former superstar, revered by thousands of millions, and how that influenced people's public perception of the events that happened there, and the broadcast of the police chase, etc., on live TV and all of that kind of stuff. That was very much in the moment, and I think until people look back at that with like an objective view and go, "This is crazy!" Like the events here that happened.
There's got to be some kind of distance, between the event and the viewer. We were there, so there's no distance there. It's like we already had our opinions. We were already fed stuff from the live when it was happening, so we already have a bunch of biases going into it, and so seeing a movie made now, it would just either feed our biases or make us think about things in a different way, but we already have that, so it's not going to be a historical thing.
I'd love to see that film though, because it's certainly got to be a satire. Like at this stage, of the things that went on there, like it's got to be played for laughs, because it was in my lifetime the one that the first court case that was played out in the media as much as it was ever played out in the courtroom, and the glove thing. Imagine if you didn't know about the glove thing and you were just sitting in the cinema watching that and going like, that can't have happened. That cannot have been a thing that happened. Like that they've got to be making that bit up.
Wow. Now when you mentioned the courtroom drama part, it's what made me think of other courtroom drama.
The end of that, the fade to black of that film, will have then Robert Kardashian's family then went on
it just gets weirder and weirder.
Oh man.
Truth stranger than fiction kind of thing.
It really is.
To get back on to actually what I think one of the key themes of this film, I think it's very much about ambition and how people's principles kind of flirt with ambition. So you had Richie Rich's character. I can't stop calling him Richie Rich. It's just the way that it's going to go. He had nothing and would basically sacrifice everything for position. It wasn't even about, he wanted to be comfortable because he was offered the teacher role and all of that kind of stuff. He would have been very, had a very happy life, but he didn't want that. He wanted the fame and he wanted the notoriety, and he would give anything to do it. And yet Thomas More was a character who had everything and wouldn't budge off his principles one bit, even with his family, when his family were pleading with him and all the rest. And that scene with the family, I think, is really lovely as well. Don't tell me about my nice dresses and my custards.
The scene with the family was kind of when they were in, when they let him into the prison and let him see them and all that stuff. I was wondering about that because it made you wonder how much King Henry thought that could be used against him if that would finally break him, and would that, or was he just being nice and saying, "Hey, I'll let you see your family before the end"? It makes you kind of think, what exactly was he trying to, by allowing his family to come in at the witching hour, the last, the end of it. What was King Henry trying to accomplish at that point? And I think if we don't get an answer, we're left to sit out in the wind and think about it ourselves. But I think if you see some of the other adaptations and stuff like that, there you might see a bit more around that, and what King Henry was up to, because in the Tudors he becomes a real bastard.
Yeah, I'd say. Yeah. What a weird time period, though.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you were just, why would you ever, if you were just there, like, to tempt the king, if you were a woman there in that time, would you even try and wouldn't you just avoid it? Because aren't you kind of rolling the dice there with your life, like hoping it works out for you?
Well, he was married to the what was his name, from Spain. I can't remember her name now, but to a very prominent Spanish royalty, member of Spanish royalty, and but she was older than him. She was quite a few years older than him, and it was in a politically arranged marriage. So what did Anne Boleyn have to gain? You're right, by being in. But the thing is, I believe the king had affairs before Anne Boleyn, and lots of them, and there was something about her that just captured his attention and captured his, black heart, and so, and I think if you look at it from the other side, her family, if she gets in, all of them go up in station. So it's all about raising your family up in status, and so I'm sure she was egged on by her family to wow, you have the king's ear, what can you do for us? And that's probably how it went.
Tom Cruise has been married more than once. That's all I'm saying.
Well, it's a lot easier when you can just cut off the heads and go on to the next one.
Yeah. It's
don't be putting ideas in people's heads. That's
you can get away with that.
Yeesh.
Oh boy.
Wow.
See what this film's done. See the avenues we've explored, all based off this drama with big speeches and that kind of stuff. It just goes to show you.
Yeah.
Do you think that the level of, because we look at something like this film and the level of acting in the film, the commitment to the characters and to the material, do you think the level of quality in acting has taken a dive over the years? Do you think it's gotten better?
I don't think so. I think everybody who gets into that, they're doing their job. I'm sure there's your fair share of nepotism that goes on in Hollywood, absolutely. But for the ones who bomb at their nepotism, they get called out when the time comes, and the other ones try to prove themselves, because they want to be their own person, their own actor and stuff. So I think it's one of those strange fields that people are actually dedicated to try to improve their craft. And these the ones who are in it for the quick buck or whatever, who get in because they know somebody, because of daddy's famous or whatever, they soon get out if they don't fit the bill for the acting chops, sort of say. They might end up doing something else stupid like reality or whatever, and they might make their money that way, but they're not considered premium actors at that point. They're considered reality stars or what have you. But but the ones who stick with it, the ones who are in still, I think that's because they love the craft, and I think the talent's there. I think it's still there. Whether or not producers put that talent to the right use might be another question.
I'd go the other side. I think the quality of acting now is night and day from then. I think the opportunities for actors to learn their craft, or because of TV and that kind of stuff, as well as stage and all those things, are just so much more greater. I think, using your point, actually, Jared, that I think people that are just pretty and can't act stick out like a sore thumb. They get called out very, very quickly, as you say. Absolutely. Regardless of otherwise. Anybody that is just and there is a certain argument to go, but I don't care if they can act. They are so pretty that I don't mind. I'm fine. In fact, it makes them seem more obtainable if it turns out that they can't act and they're only in the thing because in some way. So I think the quality of acting is really at a level. But like my question to both of you is like I live in a city where theatre is a very big deal. There are multiple big theatre houses, even in Belfast. It's very much an intrinsic part of it. And I know from speaking to the other people, you sort of think everybody has the same experience as you. Like, is theatre a big thing around you? Because, like, some of the things in theatre just would blow your mind when they're up close and personal. Like, the level of acting that we have here is just... It blows my mind every time I go see, and you're like, this is a nobody I've never heard of, and they've just done a one-person show, and I'm in floods. You know?
Not really a thing.
Yeah.
I think there's certain areas of the country that have kind of that's kind of fostered and encouraged, and I couldn't name any of these places, but I'm guessing they exist, and probably in California or other parts where the actors hang out.
We have a pretty good theater in Boston, in the North Shore up here.
Yeah.
There's quite a few theater houses that you can go and get that experience that Chris was talking about. It's pretty good.
It's such a different experience to watching TV, movies, that kind of stuff. I sort of forget that people don't have those experiences in the same way that I've been really, really fortunate to do for many, many years. And the reason I bring it up is because a friend came over from Missouri and I'm saying, oh God, he said, what could we do when we're there? And I was like, well, it's only a crappy city, but we only have these and you list the things, right? And he's like, we don't have any of that. Like, all of that's new. You know, to me, from where I live, and I was like, well, it's a different experience for people all around the world, and even though they kind of live in the Western world and that kind of stuff, everybody's experiences can be very different. And so, like, I think some of the quality of stage acting is just people that you've never heard of and will never see again. It's just like, cannot believe the kind of talent that's there. And some people, like, there's a demonization of people who move from stage to screen, for instance. In some ways, people going, oh, sell it.
Crazy. It's wild, isn't it?
From that, So in that case, like somebody like Paul Scofield, who did win a Best Actor Oscar for this, and he's not a household name by any stretch of the imagination. He's terrific in this, but he leveraged his original performance in this to the point, that he got the main thing here.
Good for him. I thought he was great.
Didn't feel other things afterwards, but all sort of, a lot of them very stagey as well, so like adaptations of Shakespeare plays. He was in The Train, but yeah.
All right, anything else you guys can think of for Manable Seasons?
Well, where does it rank? That's always the question.
Yeah.
It's getting harder now. There's more.
I know.
There's more films.
Gotta remember them all.
I think for me. It's probably down. It's not Tom Jones, but it's down the list.
You should put that in the box art. It's not Tom Jones.
Yeah, put that on the. How's that for a blurb? But I think it's probably down towards. It's so there's The Apartment, there's Sound of Music, West Side Story, Lawrence of Arabia. Maybe it's 5.
5 out of 6 or 7. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's down.
Yeah.
I don't think it's better than any of those.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. Well, they're all great movies, so it's hard to top them.
But that is true.
It's tough.
I would agree with that. I'm around there too. Yeah.
I think I'm 3.
Wow.
Oh.
What I will say, dramas are very much in my wheelhouse. Like, that's something that I don't mind it being a bit slow. In fact, it's sort of, so if it's Japanese and 4 hours long, I am in. If it's English language in 4 hours, it's a bit more of a stretch. But if it's Japanese, holy heck, that's me in. So drama's very much in my wheelhouse. For doing it, so yeah, West Side Story, Apartment, then probably this, maybe, yeah.
Wow, above Sound of Music.
Above Sound of Music, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it doesn't have the bangers, so it should kind of preclude it and not mark it down a few notches. But I can stick on the soundtrack for Sound of Music, My Fair Lady, West Side Story, and get as much out of that rather than just doing it visually. Maybe, I don't know. I'd be facetious, but
yeah. Yeah, I'd have to go Apartments and Lawrence, and then Sound of Music for my three. It's my top three.
Yeah. Lawrence is the weird one for me. I don't know where to place Lawrence for Arabia. It's so
strange. Such a weird film.
So long, and I can't. I find it hard to compare to everything else because it's its own thing. It's obviously very good, but
It also has It also had its very slow moments too.
Definitely
very slow.
It did. Agreed.
The first 3.5 hours were quite slow. Yeah.
Yes. It was a long movie.
Beautiful.
A long movie.
Absolutely beautiful.
Oh yeah.
The next one is 1967, which is Heat of the Night, right?
In the Heat of the Night.
In the Heat of the Night. Yeah. Looking forward to that one. Haven't seen it. So excited.
I haven't seen it either. Yeah.
I have seen it many, many, many years ago to the point that it almost will be a first time watch for me, I'm sure.
Nice. All right. Well, 1966 is a wrap, and we'll move on to 67 next time. In the meantime, Jared, where can people find you?
You can find me at the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel, and you can find me on podcast Speculations, as well as this Oscar project and some other fine podcasts on Page Chewing as well.
And Chris.
Yeah, you can find me in a lot of the same places as Jared. We tend to do a lot of these things together, which is always great fun. You can also find me on my YouTube channel at Chris Moen, the book channel at Chronicle of Chris. But those places.
Awesome. Yeah, come by and say hello to us and tell us what you think. Tell us how we're wrong about this movie in some way. Tell us what you think historical dramas mean. What would be historical drama to you? Come by the forums or use the send us a message link in the description below. Let us know what you think about it. And until next time, we will talk to everyone soon and hope everyone is doing great.